then it has to be administered. Okay. How to administer? They have given that looking at eastern side, the physicians should be at eastern side. Then after administration of Vamak Aushadhi, Pito Muhurtam Anupale, you have to wait for one Muhurta, that is 46 minutes. Within 46 minutes, the patient will experience nausea. Tanmana Zatarallasa, Prasekas Chardai Tada. If he feels Rallas Prasek, then we have to start Vaman Karma. But if he does not feel nausea, then we have to induce it. How to induce? Angulebhyam anaesto nalena mruduna atava. You can ask the patient to insert 2 fingers into the throat, or you can insert erandanal or kamalnal in the throat, and by after stimulation, the Vamana will be started. Galvatalu region vegan, pravrutan pravartayin. If vega are not happening, then you have to induce it. Pravartayin pravartanscha janutulya sthita. If once vega starts, you have to ask the patient to sit on the Vamana pita. Then ubhe parshvelalatecha vamataschasya dharayet. We have to assist the patient. By how? By holding his forehead or both the ears. Vamataschasya dharayet propediyat tatha nabhim pushtam cha pratilomata. And you have to press your fingers from his back into upward direction. In Ayurveda, this verse is given regarding the mode of action of Vaman Karma. It is said that Tatroshna Tikshna Sukshma Vyavayi Vikasya Aushadhani Soviryena Radhin Uppeta Dhamnir Anusrutya Sthulanustotobhya Kevalam Shariragatam Dosha Sangatam Agneyatva Vishyanteti Tekshna Vichintanti Savichinna Pariblavam Sneha Bhavite Kaye Snehakta Bhajana Sthamyom Shaudram Sajjanam Anupravana Bhavat Amashayam Agamyan Udan Pranullo Agni Vayu Vyadmakat Urdu Bhaga Pradhavat Aushadasyam Urdham Uchit Pitte. Here they have given all the description as per Ayurveda that this medicine is Ushna, Tikshna, Sukshma, Vyavayi, and Vikasi. All these 5 properties, and by Swavirya it reaches to Hridaya, and from Hridaya it goes to the Dhamnis, and from Dhamnis it goes to Sthul and Anu Strotas. And once it reaches to Sthul and Anu Strotas, it brings all dosha sanghat from all the body to the amasha. How this brings the dosha sanghat? They have given an example. If a pot is applied ghee or oil inside it, and if we put a drop of honey into it, it will flow and reach to the bottom of the pot without any resistance. In the same way, when we apply internal oleation, there will be no resistance in the body, and dosha will reach to the amashaya without any resistance. And thereafter, due to Mahabhutadikya, that means Agni and Vayu Mahabhutadikya, there will be Vamana, and this is described in Ayurveda. Now we will see about what modern physiopathology says about the Vamana. Vomiting is the expulsion of gastric contents through the mouth due to mass antiperistalsis. This is Vamana. Nausea is uneasy feeling of mass antiperistalsis. An uneasy feeling, nausea is which is preceded by Vaman Karma. Retching is also similar to nausea. It is series of weaker and unproductive vomiting. Why vomiting results? In modern science, there are 2 things. Firstly, for vomiting, as you know, that vomiting is controlled by autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is, all of you know, that it controls involuntary functions of the body. Involuntary functions means respiration, beating of heart, circulation, movement of gut, secretion of gut. All these things are which are not in our control of our willpower. These are controlled by autonomic nervous system. And salient feature of autonomic nervous system is that it can operate with very rapidity. It is so rapid because it works by dual mechanism. Firstly, as like other nervous system, it can also operate through nerves. And secondly, it can operate through neurotransmitters. And those neurotransmitters like acetylcholine or dopamine, serotonin, these are neurotransmitters. And due to neurotransmitter, it can act very rapidly than in compared to other nervous system. So there are two things. One is stimulation of vomiting center, which is situated in the midbrain, and thereafter mechanical action of vomiting. These are two parts of vomiting. First is most essential is stimulation of vomiting center. So vomiting results due to stimulation of vomiting center, which is located in the lateral medullary reticular formation in medulla oblongata. Apart from this is the picture showing you one side vomiting center is there, and another side it is chemoreceptor trigger zone. Another center of vomiting is also there, which is called as chemoreceptor trigger zone. This chemoreceptor trigger zone lies outside the blood-brain barrier. Obviously, there are some difference of opinion in the physiology specialists. There whether it is inside the BBB or outside the BBB. Some argue that it is outside the BBB. So let us consider that this chemoreceptor trigger zone is outside the blood-brain barrier. So this is very important that most of the drugs, especially the modern drugs, which can act directly on the chemoreceptor trigger zone, because it lies outside the blood-brain barrier. And vomiting center is located inside the blood-brain barrier, and therefore vomiting center can be stimulated only in case of from the stimuli from cerebrum. Means from cerebrum, if we see some dirty picture or dirty odor, then cerebrum sends signal to vomiting center, and then vomiting is caused. So there are two main distinct centers. One is vomiting center and another is chemoreceptor trigger zone. Vomiting center receives inputs from GI mucosa, chemoreceptor trigger zone, vestibular apparatus. Efferents from this center, when stimulated, cause stimulation of phrenic nerve supplying to the diaphragm and somatic nerves supplying to the abdominal muscle to promote vomiting. Vomiting center can cause vomiting by giving signals to the concerning muscles of stomach, diaphragm, and respiratory muscles. And vomiting center and chemoreceptor trigger zone also, when stimulated, it sends signal to vomiting center and cause the vomiting. Thus, you may far now understood that vomiting can be happen due to stimulation of chemoreceptor trigger zone and vomiting center. Now, even if irritation of GI tract mucosa by drugs or by irritant leads to release of serotonin that stimulates vomiting center through serotonin receptors. CTZ is rich in dopamine, serotonin, and neuropamine receptors. Motion sickness occurs due to stimulation of vestibular apparatus and cerebellum. These structures results in stimulation of vomiting center by activating M1 and H1 receptors. So, important thing here is that vomiting can be occurred only if stimulation of vomiting center or chemoreceptor trigger zone is happened, or even if stimulation is not happened directly, indirectly irritation of GI mucosa also can cause vomiting. So there are three pathways of causation of vomiting. This chemoreceptor trigger zone is a major sensory release station in afferent vomiting pathway. It is situated in the lateral border of area prosterna. Histologically, it resembles carotid body. It is not part of brain and is in contact with circulating blood. It is out of blood-brain barrier. CTZ is purely relay station as an in absence of vomiting center, not capable to initiate vomiting. See, CTZ is not independent center. It is under control of vomiting center. Variety of drugs including morphine, apomorphine, alkylating agents, digitalis, stimulants, various drugs from modern science, that is morphine, apomorphine, digitalis, they stimulate CTZ, they cause vomiting, and phenothiazine and antihistaminic drugs, cetirizine, chlorpheniramine, depress it. Some drugs are causing stimulation of vomiting center, and conversely, other drugs are causing depression of vomiting center. Now you may be clear that for vomiting center or chemoreceptor triggered zone has to be stimulated. Now, when it is stimulated, the very important phenomena occurs, that is antiperistalsis related to vomiting. All of you may be knowing peristalsis. Peristalsis is movement of gut to produce the content of intestines from the direction mouth to anus. But here, in case of vomiting, opposite side movement of gut occurs, and due to which the contents from small intestine or duodenum are propelled into the stomach. So let's read it. In early stages of excessive distension of GI tract, antiperistalsis begins much earlier than vomiting begins. It begins from ileum, and antiperistalsis wave begins at the rate of 2 to 3 centimeters per second. This pushes large share of large intestine duodenum to stomach within 3 to 5 minutes. Upper portion of gastrointestinal tract, especially duodenum, becomes overtly distended, and this distension becomes the exciting factor that initiate the vomiting act. तो अभी तक हमारे ये समझ में आया कि वमन होने के पहले वोमिटिंग सेंटर या केमोरेसेप्टर ट्रिगर जोन स्टिमुलेट होना जरूरी है. वो स्टिमुलेट होने के बाद क्या होता है, तो फर्स्ट थिंग इज एंटीपेरिस्टालसिस. तो एंटीपेरिस्टालसिस की वजह से क्या होता है कि स्टमक में जो कंटेंट्स है उसके अलावा स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन स्पेशली ड्यूओडेनम के जो कंटेंट्स है वो सब स्टमक में आ जाता है. तो स्टमक में ऑलरेडी जो कंटेंट है और उसमें फिर स्मॉल इंटेस्टाइन से और ड्यूओडेनम से कंटेंट आने के कारण वो ओवर एक्सटेंशन इसका हो जाता है, ओवर डिस्टेंशन हो जाता है स्टमक का. At the onset of vomiting, strong intrinsic contractions occur in the both duodenum and stomach, along with partial relaxation of esophageal stomach sphincter, thus allowing vomiters to begin moving from the stomach into the esophagus. Now, the third factor. First factor is stimulation of vomiting center or chemoreceptor trigger zone. Second factor is antiperistalsis, and third factor is vomiting act. Vomiting act is actual act of vomiting. How we vomit actually, that is called vomiting act. Now let us see how it happens. Once the vomiting center has been sufficiently stimulated and the vomiting act instituted, the first effects are deep breath, raising of hyoid bone and larynx to pull up upper esophageal sphincter open. Third, closing of glottis to prevent vomitous flow into the lungs, and fourth is lifting of the soft palate to close the posterior nares. What is happening here? If you look the anatomy of upper GI tract, here is the stomach, and here we have collected all the material, which is means the stomach is over distended. And once the stomach is over distended, then what going to happen is all the content of stomach are going to propel into the esophagus, and from esophagus here they are coming to the mouth. They are to be expelled from the mouth. In this procedure, now the care is taken by the body not to let the content enter into the respiratory tract. So here is glottis, which prevents entry of the content of stomach into the respiratory tract, and here are inner nares, they also get closed. So I just often tell the students that an example, that if you take a plastic bag, thin plastic bag, and fill it by water and just hold into your hand and punch it forcibly, what will happen? It will tear off. Similarly, here, what is going to happen, that our stomach it is like a plastic bag. It will be compressed between diaphragm and respiratory abdominal muscles and their abdominal wall muscles. In between both of them, it will be squeezed or compressed. Due to that, all the content of stomach are going to be forcibly moved from esophagus to mouth, and from mouth to exterior. Next comes a strong downward contraction of the diaphragm along with simultaneous contraction of abdominal wall muscles. See what happens: downward contraction of diaphragm along with simultaneous contraction of all abdominal wall muscles. This squeezes the stomach between diaphragm and abdominal muscles, building the intragastric pressure to a high level. Finally, the lower esophageal sphincter relaxes completely, allowing expulsion of gastric contents upward through the esophagus. Thus, it is just in the vomiting act, what is the care taken by the body, that all the contents from stomach should not enter into respiratory tract. Thus, vomiting act results from squeezing action of muscles of the abdomen associated with simultaneous contraction of stomach wall and opening of esophageal sphincter so that gastric contents are expelled. Now, there are very much neurotransmitter role involved in the Vaman karma. These are acetylcholine, dopamine, histamine, substance P, and serotonin. Another important substance or hormone is a cortisol, or it is also called as hydrocortisol. Cortisol, all of you know that it is a steroid hormone produced by adrenal cortex. It is secreted for fight or flight responses of the body. It is secreted during the stress, and during vomiting, it is seen in larger quantities. By circadian rhythm, it is observed that concentration of cortisol is highest in the morning period. So, therefore, our ancient acharyas may have suggested to conduct Vaman during morning only. Now, which are the principle? We have studied Vaman Vidhi by Ayurvedic principle, by Ayurvedic scholar acharyas, as told by Ayurvedic acharya, and also we have learned about the modern mode of action as per modern science, vomiting. Now we will compare both of them. Now look at this slide. You will learn that Akantapan. What we are giving before Vaman karma, we are giving Akantapan. What will this cause? This will cause over distension. This is very important to give Akantapan, because due to Akantapan and repeated administration of fluid